Hi there. Today I want to talk about learning the basics in a language. We always hear people say that you first have to learn the basics, and if you have the basics, then you have a solid foundation on which you can then, eventually learn to become fluent. It's very important to start by learning the basics. I disagree. The best way to learn the basics is the way I have done with Ukrainian and what I will then do for Polish and if I go to Dutch or other languages. First, get exposed to the language. Now, I admit that it's easier if you're into a related language, but even if you're an English speaker learning Spanish, it's close enough. Read and listen the way I do on Link. I take these lessons, I look up, save words that I don't understand. I sometimes struggle a bit with the meaning. I've been doing it now for 6 weeks with Ukrainian, to the point where I understand a lot of what is said by politicians. I understand a lot of what I read. The number of new words is greatly reduced. Granted, my Czech and my Russian help me. But I'm quite convinced that I could go into, and in fact I'm going to do it, in languages that aren't related, just to demonstrate that it works. I've already started doing some Polish, again without any reference to any grammar book. So, where are the basics in all of this? Well, now that I've been 6 weeks or more with Ukrainian, and now that I have a sense for the language, I've been exposed to the language, I've read in the language, I've listened to the language, I've got a bunch of words in the language, I start to kind of understand a lot of what politicians are saying on television, for example. So today, I went to my Teach Yourself Ukrainian, which of course says, everything you need to speak, read, and write is what it promises. Of course, it doesn't have that, but it has some dialogues, and it has some explanation of the structures. And so I go in there now, and I read about the verb conjugations and the declensions, and I discover some of the things where Ukrainian differs from Russian, and pick up some key, I didn't even know how to say hello, how are you? It didn't matter to me, because I was just exposing myself to the language, listening to interesting content. I didn't need hello, how are you, my name is, nice to meet you. Didn't need any of those things. Now, I'm not sure I'm going to need them again. I might forget them again, but it's fun now to go through. It's so much easier to absorb these basics, these things that everyone gets at the beginning, and yet which are so difficult to grasp. And it seems like learning the language is such an enormous task because there's all these things to remember. Well, now it's actually quite painless. And I go through and in fact, reviewing some of my grammar for Ukrainian also helps me review some of my grammar for Russian. And remember, you have to review the basics over and over and over again. You don't master the basics. The basics is something that you pass over regularly, and each time you do so, you pick up more of it, and more of it sticks. And in doing this, I'm picking up some of the sort of words like, yet, even, because, therefore, however, nevertheless, and all these other words that I've been seeing, and but now it's kind of reinforcing to see them presented systematically in a text like this. But it's far more meaningful for me now that I've had the exposure, and that's exactly what I'm going to do with Polish. I'm going to be moving gradually into more and more Polish, and after maybe a month or two, I might go and grab myself a Teach Yourself book for Polish. So that is how I recommend dealing with the basics. Don't get hung up with the basics at the beginning. You can kind of leaf through them, give yourself a sense roughly of how the language works without trying to remember any of it. Get in there with some texts, read and listen. I like doing it on Link, obviously. I'm not going to pretend I don't, because the words I don't know I look up. The meaning gradually gets clearer and clearer. I find I have this very interesting content that I can find on the internet. In the case of Polish, I discovered that we have great content in our Polish library. Really good stuff put there by, I can't remember the name, but you'll find it there. It's someone who creates content for Polish and has agreed to allow us to use his stuff in our library. I know I'll be able to do this for Dutch, and then I'll try it maybe for Turkish. But the approach again will be the same. Exposure first, some familiarity with the language, some words, possibly a brief passover of the you know, leafing through the grammar but without trying to learn it. And then after a couple of months, really go back and spend a day going through the basics. So the basics comes afterwards, not before, according to me. Now, I'm sure there'll be some contrary points of view. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.